taking first cut. Golly!
Welcome to the First Cut podcast. We have a Ryder Cup preview episode for you here today. I'm Greg Ducharme. No Rick Gaiman today, but we're holding down the fort with Kyle Porter, who is on location, and Patrick McDonald, who is on an off-site location, just like myself. Welcome, gentlemen. KP, how is it over there in
technically,
Rome?
Technically, I'm in an off-site location. This is not the architecture at Marco Simone, but it's awesome. It took me about a day to get the body adjusted. I was struggling when I got in. Can't sleep on the plane, but stayed up basically until I basically just slept like 1 hour out of 40 or 45 or whatever, and then just crashed last night. So we're good now. We're dialed. Walked the course today, which was fun. It was good to see. There's not a ton of enthusiasm yet. Like there's just not the noise that you are accustomed to at a Ryder Cup. I think because it's Wednesday, right? But it's really hot, which is such a twist from previous Ryder Cups. I associate Ryder Cups with being cold and cool and like fall weather, and it was like 90 today. It was really hot. So it's going to be interesting to see how that affects the play, the fans, like everything that we've kind of come to love about this event.
Yeah, no sweater weather this year in the Ryder Cup, it seems. Patrick McDonald also here. Patrick, what's going on?
Yeah, just the Ryder Cup week, Greg. That's what's going on.
No big deal.
And we will be robbed of a great cricket sweater potential uniform from the USA, that white knit one with the logo in the middle.
So good.
Hopefully it gets a little chilly in the morning hours where someone like a Scotty Scheffler wears that, and he looks about 80 years old. That
thing was made with Scotty in mind, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, yeah, like KP said, really hot out there. You had Novak Djokovic, Carlos Sainz, Catherine Newton on the property today. KP, if you could put in a good word to her for me, that would be much appreciated. And
who is it? What's her deal? Who is that?
She was in, I think, a new Marvel movie recently.
Okay, so she's an actress.
Mm-hmm. But I saw a video of her today lacing a 9-iron.
She flushes it. She's a flusher.
Yeah. So if you could put it in a good word, that would be much appreciated.
I'll put that at the top of my list of priorities this week.
Cool.
So we got a number of topics on the docket for today, including some storylines, some best bets, U.S. storylines, European storylines, all that kind of stuff. But before we get to that, KP, I want to know, when you walked this golf course today, all the reports were it's extremely hilly, extremely difficult walk. Aside from the heat, aside from the atmosphere, what did you think of the golf course as you were walking around there today?
Yeah, a couple of things. I wrote about this for CBSSports.com. I don't think it's out yet, but it was interesting. I was with Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas's group, and Spieth was getting he was getting on the golf cart, not after every shot, but he was being driven around the course, which was, I guess, to preserve energy and not have to, it's a Brooks Koepka brought this up today. It's like it's a long week. Like, it's really tiring. Just all the stuff you have to do and everything that is kind of it's very draining. So I think he was preserving energy there, I guess. I think it's one of the things that we heard a lot of is there's so much rough growing up. I think everybody thought when they heard some of these things, it's going to be like Paris, right? Because you kind of hear, the Europeans are going to try to play to their advantage or whatever. Well, if you look at it close enough, their advantage is off the tee. This is not the same Europe. Totally, for sure. And so they've cut down a ton of the rough that they had even as recently as 2 weeks ago when the U.S. team came over to practice. Max Homa talked about how it looks like, I think it was him or Morikawa talked about how it's like completely different. Like it's kind of wild how much it's changed over the last couple of weeks. And I had heard that was because the Euro, at least the top guys on the Euro team, were kind of like, it's not really working for us, And so I think because of that, and because you're going to get some really short holes, like there's a lot of drivable par fours, the par fives are short. It's going to be like a ton of momentum swings and a lot of birdies. And Morikawa talked about, like, listen, there's going to be so many birdies. It's going to be unbelievable. And that's what you wanted to Ryder Cup. I think for the U.S. team, it could get going in the wrong direction if that happens. And so you just have to know going in, hey, they're going to make a ton of birdies because these holes are set up for them to do so. And I think driving is going to be paramount. They've got some weird, like, I think it was 8 is really narrow. Like it looks like it's this wide. Like where are my hands? It's unreal how narrow it is. And so you're not going to see driver everywhere, even on longer holes. You're going to see some 3-woods. A lot of JT hit 3-wood a bunch where I was like, oh, it's a driver hole, and he would pull 3-wood. So it's going to be a pretty interesting, low-key strategic course. I don't know if it's a great architecture, but I think the strategy there is going to be really interesting.
They seem to be two different things. If you look at or read what, the real pure architecture writers have to say about a golf course and compare it to what it is for an event like this, those seem to be two different things. But Patrick, you look at and you listen to some of those things that Kyle talked about. We talked about some of these elements yesterday as well in our DFS episode about the distance advantage for the Europeans. Now, over the last 30 years, the last 6 Ryder Cups in Europe, it's felt like the Americans have had an advantage on paper, but the Europeans have still won. What do you think is the key to their success? Is some of that missing, or is there some intangible that has allowed them to continue to win at home?
I really think it just goes back to their experience on these type of golf courses growing up. Yes, they all come over to the United States, but from when they first take a club in their hand to when they go to college, they're playing these style of golf courses where I know it's a little different this year where they have cut down the rough a little bit, but you got to put the ball in the fairway. It's a really strong driving test, like Kyle said. And you got Hovland, Aberg, Rahm, Rory, the 4 best drivers in the game. Throw Scotty Scheffler in there and Cantlay as well. And that just puts Europe in a really advantageous position. And going back to the ebbs and flows, the vagaries of match play, so to speak, Rory McIlroy, I thought, had a great quote today about the golf course where the first 6 holes or so are kind of the first couple chapters of a book where it kind of gets you into it. You get sucked in a little bit, but the real plot of it is going to be number 7 through 18 with the back and forth. You're going to be able to get some really tough holes mixed in there as well, in addition to the par 4s. And so just Europe's ability to drive the golf ball and both straight and long, it's a big advantage. And for them to kind of shape the course that way isn't really too surprising.
Seems like
Patrick, let's see how they set up the.
Go ahead, KP.
Well, I was going to say I'm interested to see how they set up the par 3s because, you hear them talk, and I think Rory has said this, like they want to turn it into a long iron contest. I don't know if you do, like I that was a little bit what Whistling Straits turned into, and that didn't go that well. I know it's a different European team, and I do think that turning it into a driving contest, it doesn't hurt the U.S., but I think it's mostly good. It's good for both teams. I think it helps both teams. But the long iron stuff, I don't know. Like, do you want this U.S. team playing a bunch? Do you want Wyndham Clark and Colin Morikawa and Max Homa and JT and Brooks Koepka and Scotty Scheffler? Do you want them playing long par 3s? I don't think you do. Like,
no.
I think that's bad for the Europeans. Now, I don't have all the data that they have, and I'm an idiot writer and mostly don't know what I'm talking about, but that has kind of stood out to me, and I'm interested to see what they do with those par 3s.
It's the crooked golf media at it again.
Of course.
But the thing to me, I don't know what you could do to hurt the United States team. This team, which is different than even 2021, they seem to be far more balanced. You look at just about every statistical category, and the U.S. has success in everywhere. They have accurate players. They have the most accurate player. They have the best iron player. They have the one area where they seem to be lacking is distance, and we know they have plenty of that. So I'm not sure where the U.S. struggles here. Other than like as far as setup is concerned.
It's if you turn it into Paris, that would be bad for them, right? But it would also be bad for the Europeans.
Right. Exactly.
And so I just don't know that you're going to have a course setup that is, and this was one of my points going in, Craig, is like everything's so homogenized on the PGA Tour, and all these guys for the most part are playing the PGA Tour, that they're all kind of playing similar golf. It's not 1977 where there's a European style and an American style, right? That all of that's kind of been brought closer together, if not completely eradicated. And so I just don't know. That was a unique. I heard. I think it was the No Line Up guys talking about how that was a very unique European team in 2018. That they really like leveraged that course to their advantage in a way that I don't even know if that's possible with this year. I think you would almost like hurt your team if you try to do something like that again.
Right. It seemed like that team had some more clear advantages. There were clear differences between the two. Now, Patrick, I want to talk about a couple. You think about these United States storylines, and one of the key factors coming in here, which I thought you brought up a really interesting point yesterday, and how there have been no foursome teams on Europe. None of the there's no possibility of a repeat foursome team. Where you look at the U.S. with these kind of clean and easy teams of Scheffler, Burns, Justin Thomas, and Jordan Spieth, Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, Max Homa, and Morikawa. Do you think this can switch the advantage in a particular format like foursomes to the United States side?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the record of Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele going 5-0-0 across President's Cups and Ryder Cups, and then Scheffler, whoever he might be paired with. I know we disagree. You think it'll be Burns. I think it might be Koepka there Friday morning. And then Spieth and JT, you don't really know what they can get together, but when they are good, they're lethal. Factor in Homa and Morikawa as well. And you have four really formidable duos. And I think what Luke Donald did switching the format to foursomes in the morning is a way to kind of ease in these younger guys into the competition, where you probably want a Bobby McIntyre if you're going to play him, or a Nikolai Hogard if you're going to play him on day one, to play in four ball, and to do that right off the bat when the fans are at their height, waiting for that first tee shot. I think it's a lot more difficult to do in the morning than putting them off in the afternoon and having them, wait and watch the competition a little bit, let them get their feet underneath them, so to speak. So I think it was a really heady play. I know some people disagree with that, where Europe has been so good with four ball in the morning. Why are you switching things now? But it's a completely different team, a new era, a lot of young guys, and they're going to be able to put out their veterans like Rahm, Rory, Hovland, Fleetwood, Hatton off in the morning, and kind of have these younger guys ease into the competition more. But I do like the U.S.'s prospects and foursomes. I know their history in Europe in particular is really bad. What is 2-12-2?
Yep.
Ouch. I am going to go out on a limb and say they improve on that record this Ryder Cup.
Yeah, last year Ryder Cup, that was one of my paths to victory, is just for them to win three. If they win three foursomes points, I think they're in a good spot. I really do, and I don't know if they'll. I don't know. I'm into this Scheffler Koepka thing too. Way into it. Like
for foursomes.
Sure. You can put Scheffler with anybody in foursomes. I just like them together. I think they're, I don't know. Like that would not be a fun thing if you get on the first tee and you got Scheffler and Koepka across from you. Because I think you got Scheffler and Burns, and if you're Matt Fitzpatrick, you got Scheffler and Burns. You're like, okay, I can do something against these guys. You got Scheffler and Koepka. It's just it just feels different. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of intimidation there. World number one and Brooks Koepka. Right? That's scary. That's really scary. I am hearing that's going to happen. They're one of the. You look at the two practice rounds, and there's a lot you can make when you look at pairings. But for the U.S., Scheffler played with Koepka both days. And Koepka's the only guy that Scheffler played with both days in the practice rounds. Thomas and Spieth, Schauffele, Cantlay, they played together both days. And then you had Harman, Fowler, Homa played together both days. But with three of them, it's less kind of, it doesn't really tell you quite as much. So I'm very curious to see what they do there.
Well, I think one thing on JT and Spieth is, are they going to, they're going to play together, obviously.
Yeah.
I hope they don't get into a situation where, and I don't think they will, but I think there will be the temptation to kind of roll JT out there and like prove that you're right about the whole thing. It was such a big deal that it was like, oh, well, we're just going to, like, JT's going to go 4-0. That's how right I was. And if you do that and they keep getting beat, then all of a sudden you've given Europe this sort of thing to rally around of like,
yes.
Hey, we're taking down Spieth and JT, and that's like your heart, like that's your heart and soul, right? And they don't have to do that. They've got so much depth that if JT and Spieth are clearly not feeling it, play Wyndham and Ricky or Brian Harman. And you have the, like, that's the point of the depth is to find the hot hand or the not hot hand and replace them. And I'm curious to see how that goes for Spieth and JT this week. Because I just hope they kind of handle. I hope they don't like expose them too much and give Europe something to rally around.
Yeah, that's kind of the razor's edge with that pairing. We talked about how risky this was for Zach Johnson. It's an opportunity for Justin Thomas, right? I mean, you kind of have this chance to cement yourself as like an Ian Poulter, like an auto pick, regardless of form for the rest of time, for as long as he wants. And I think if it goes the other way, now you got to watch his form much more closely. So it's a risky proposition, and you're right, KP. It gives a ton of ammo to them. But there are a few things I also find interesting. Patrick, I want to kind of go back to this foursomes 4-ball thing. I was looking at the last Ryder Cups and where everybody has been after the first session. The U.S. has led after the first session in the last 4 Ryder Cups. In 2012, they tied after the first session. In 2010 and 2008, the U.S. led after the first session. So it seems like everywhere in every format, the U.S. has led after session 1. But maybe there's an advantage for the Europeans here. We haven't talked about this, but the Europeans have been playing competitive golf. The Americans haven't, except for JT and Homa, who played still a long time ago. Is that potential rust, a concern? And does that kind of swing an advantage in that first session back to the Europeans? Do you think that could have played into Luke Donald's decision?
I think to an extent, potentially. But look, as Wyndham Clark said today, there's the chance that maybe the Europeans leak a little oil come Sunday afternoon after such a stressful week and playing so much golf, mentally, physically, emotionally. And we got to take Wyndham Clark, right? He's done it before. He's played in a Ryder Cup before. He should know exactly what's going on.
So I was in that presser, Patrick, and he said it, and I was like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't know if I would have said it. And then he, like, I was like, okay, maybe he just kind of slipped up there. And then he went back to it. He said it again. And I was like, you don't have, like, I understand what he was getting at. He just didn't frame it in a way that was, the way he framed it was very bulletin boardy. And that's not what you want to do.
I do like, honestly, them talking, right? I mean, golfers, they give the same answers every time. I left a few strokes out there. I didn't really have any buff stuff, scrapped it around, put together a good score. So I do appreciate Wyndham and Brooks, having real answers to some of the questions that are asked. But going back to Luke Donald, rest versus rust, I forget who said it, but in 2018, they were talking about how that team was just tired heading into Paris. They played a lot of golf. It was a quick turnaround after Tiger won the Tour Championship, going to Le Golf National. And so I do think it could go one of two ways, where maybe the first session in particular, they are a bit rusty. But if you're Luke Donald, on the flip side, why would you want to put your kind of strength against that rust, I guess, to go 4-0 like they did in the second or in the afternoon session in 2018 in the morning in foursomes. But you could maybe look at it from a different perspective where, all right, maybe we could tie 4-ball or get a 2.5, 1.5 lead in 4-ball when they might not be as sharp as they are. But
Yeah,
these guys are all professionals. I think they'll be fine. They'll be up for it. They've had this circled on their calendar. Brian Harmon talked today about not over preparing for this with all that time off, where he's trying to build up and peak for this moment. And instead of shooting rounds in the low 60s at his home course last week, hopefully he does it this week instead. And so they've done it so many times before where I'm not too concerned about it, but it will definitely be a storyline if after the morning session on Friday, it's 4-0 Europe.
you're talking about over a month off. I think I know 2018 they were really tired, but it's like the opposite ends of the spectrum. You had playoffs, tour championship, Tiger winning, and then you're on a plane to Paris the next day. And now you got over a month, you got vacation in between, right? You make a couple trips to Rome and back without playing a tournament. It'll be very interesting to see. But there are some European storylines as well, as they are the underdog. They're the underdog / favorite in a very strange way. We're going to talk about the Europeans and some of those key storylines. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
There's no Belichickery here.
When Sunday football isn't enough.
Dislike that take.
Great take.
That other pregame show will put you over the tops.
I'm all in. Let's go viral here.
Every Sunday, all the insight you need on CBS Sports Network.
And we're back. We're going to shift our attention over to, for the most part. I mean, look, this goes wherever we want it to go. But for the most part, we're going to switch our attention over to some of the European storylines. KP, this team's top heavy, right? You got Rory and Rahm and Hovland, 3 of the top 4 players in the world, all on one team, and depth seems to be an issue. How do you think that plays out for Luke Donald? How does he take advantage of his strength? How does he kind of balance that whole thing through this long week?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think they're better than they were in 2021.
Yep, I think so too.
Probably the 6 worst players. They probably had the 6 worst players at the event in 2021, which is not what you want. And so I don't think that they're going to have. I mean, I think it's going to be a fairly normal, straightforward Ryder Cup for Europe in that, yeah, of course you're going to play your top guys 4 or 5 times, and then you'll just fill everybody else into the spots that they need. The problem in 2021 that they got into was that Victor didn't win a point, Rory was terrible, and Rahm and Sergio were needing to win like 10 points, only playing 4 matches. And so they were just so top heavy then that they couldn't. They put too much pressure on their top guys. Like, it's so hard to go 4-0 on the first 2 days. Rahm did it, but it's very difficult to do. They don't have to. Like, I actually think they're pretty decently balanced. I think what's going to be interesting is what do you get from like the middle of that group? Like, what do you get from the Lowry? I don't know who else you would throw. Tyrrell Hatton, Fitzpatrick. Like, what are those guys giving you? Because Fitzpatrick's been bad at Ryder Cups. Hatton's been okay. Lowry was decent in Whistling Straits. But if you get like good numbers out of those guys, and then maybe Ludwig or Sepp Straka or somebody like that shows out as a rookie, and the top guys kind of take care of business, like, you're going to be in good shape. I think the more I talk about this, Greg, the more I just think this is going to be like one of the closest Ryder Cups throughout the entire event that we've ever seen. And I was looking back at some of the old ones, and like 2012 was close, but it was only close at the very end. It wasn't close on Saturday night.
Right.
It was a blowout. It was 10-4, and then it was 10-6, but it was kind of presumed that it was over. 2010 was close, but again, Europe was up 3 going into, and that was a weird one because it finished on Monday, and it was just kind of a mess. you have to go back to, I think, like 2002 at the Belfry. The last time the teams were, I think this was the last time the teams were tied on Saturday, like after the second session, 8-8 going into singles. I think that's what we're getting this year, which is going to be awesome. Like, I can't wait for it. It's going to be sweet.
So, Patrick, if it's 8-8 heading into singles, who has the advantage? Is it the home European team, or is it, because this feels incredibly balanced too? You expect to get a little more out of your rookies who are at home versus on the road, yet the rookies for the Americans seem to be a little more proven in other areas. So who does that give an advantage to if it is that tight?
I think 1 through 12, I favor the Americans, so that would be in singles, but 1 through 8, I would give the edge to the Europeans. And we talk about the top heavy nature of their team in 2021 even. And I mean, Rory McIlroy was world number 15 in 2021. Isn't that crazy to even think about? And he's arguably been the best player in the world since the PGA Championship. I know Victor went on his run. They have him too, and John Rahm, all in stellar form, which it was really only Rahm in 2021. So like Kyle said, that middle portion of the European team, I've said one of the Englishmen needs to come up big for Europe to win this, whether it's Hatton or Fitzpatrick, Fleetwood. I think Rose could have a big contribution in foursomes where they do lack experience as a team. But if it goes into Sunday 12-12 or 8-8, I would have to give the lean to the Americans, just because how much is Luke Donald going to play Bobby McIntyre the first 2 days? Maybe once, maybe twice maximum, you would think. Maybe the same with the Hogard as well. I know we have high hopes for Straka, but if he doesn't get off to a good start in his first match, does he ride the pine? Because the Europeans really do have to ride Rory, Rahm, and Hovland into the ground. And I mean, that's a good game plan. I'd go to war with that.
Do they?
That type of
You
game
think
plan.
they do?
Absolutely. I do. And you could throw Fleetwood in there potentially as well, given his debut in 2018 and his form this whole season. So I think they got to go between the three of them, 13 matches minimum. And
wow.
Go ahead.
I want to read you the bottom of their team at Whistling Straits was Paul Casey, Lee Westwood, Poulter, Bernd Wiesberger. Fitzpatrick hadn't won a major yet. So they were just, I don't know. They were bad in 2021. Rory was playing bad. I don't know that they have to ride those guys at the top into the ground. I maybe they do. I don't know. It'll depend on foursomes matchups, right? If they see like, hey, Sepp and Lowry are going to be sick together in foursomes, let's play them, and then you can give Hovland a break. Whatever. I don't know how that's going to go for them, but I just don't know that they're as top heavy as it seems like, and maybe as much as they were in previous years.
Especially when you consider the two guys that are, I mean, Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the two guys that are kind of at the bottom of the barrel on this team are two guys that have won at this golf course, which is kind of wild to think about, right? It might be worth putting them, Højgaard and McIntyre, that is, putting them out in a 4-ball. And that might give an opportunity to give a Rory, a Rahm, a Hovland a rest on Saturday afternoon and be fresh for singles. And that may be where this whole thing comes down to. As long as you're within, 2-3 points heading into singles, it's anybody's game. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen 4 points. If you're within 4, you do have a chance. I mean, they did it a little over a decade ago. Who's to say they couldn't do it on home soil? So
it takes a little more of a miracle, right? I mean, the 10-6 is a miracle.
Yeah,
I think 2. I think 2. You feel fine.
Right. That's your target.
Greg, did you see Koepka's comment today about wanting the ball at the end of the game?
Yes. And look, is he a guy that's going late in your lineup for that? Or do you think the end of the game comes in the first session?
Well, what do you mean in the first session?
Like match play is a little different than stroke play. In stroke play, it's 72 holes. The end of the game doesn't happen until Sunday afternoon on the back nine, right? But in match play and in an event like this, points are given out each day. Holes are won, in all these moments. So in a way, the end of the game happens a lot closer to the end of the game, if that makes sense. And it gives someone like Koepka an opportunity to thrive. And maybe other players, it gives them a challenge. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I think it. So for people that didn't see it, he was asked. Everybody would say they want the ball. They want to have the Ryder Cup come down to their match. And how many people actually want that? And he said, very few. And I thought it was a very Koepka response. I don't know if he deep down actually believes some of the things that he says, but I think he convinces himself that he believes them, which is probably half the battle, at times in terms of being a world-class professional golfer. It did make me think about who I wanted it to come down to. And, the problem is the Europeans are obsessed with who they send out first. Like that's such a big deal to them. And so you usually send out you usually send out a Rory or a Rahm or somebody like that first because it's a really meaningful thing to be sent out first. So some of your titans you don't get in the latter portion that the Ryder Cup could come down to. You get it like a Jamie Donaldson closing it out, or Alex Noren or something like that. So I don't know that you're going to get the matchup I think the matchup that I would want is probably Rory JT. Like if the Ryder Cup was tied 13.5, and they were tied with 3 holes left, I mean, you wouldn't even be able to breathe. It would be an unbelievable atmosphere. But I don't think you'll get that because I think those are guys that'll go probably early in Sunday. I
mean, that feels like the first match Sunday.
It was in Paris.
Right, exactly. And it probably is again. I mean, are you a fan of? We got to get to some of our best bets here too. But Patrick, you think about a single setup in a really close Ryder Cup. Are you a fan of front loading? You want some momentum, or do you want to try to get this situation where you have what did you say, Titan, Kyle? Somebody who really wants the ball at the end.
Titans, yes.
Yeah, you want a Brooks Koepka or a Justin Thomas in late in your group?
I think I would prefer to send out kind of the Energizer bunnies, like a Ludwig perhaps, or a Wyndham Clark. Tell him to put his money where his mouth is. You go off first for the U.S. You go get us that crucial first point in Sunday single, or a yappy dog like Brian Harmon maybe. Again, a Ludwig. You got Seb Straka who can make birdies and bunches for them if it's very close, right? And then you go. Typically, it's one around that 7 to 10 area where the Ryder Cup can be clinched, so to speak. And I think from 4 to 8, 4 to 9, that's where you really put the meat of your lineup there and try to take this thing. And I know JT Rory would be fantastic. The more I thought about it, and after Brooks said his comments, I thought about the PGA Championship. It'd be great if we got a little rematch between him and Hovland as well. After Hovland rattled off all these victories, for him to get another crack at Brooks Koepka would be fantastic as well in this moment. And maybe one of them gets an 8-footer to win the Ryder Cup for all we know.
I kind of like Rory Brooks. They're such
they're friends.
I know, but there's such a interesting debate with these two guys because they're the best players of the post Tiger era. Maybe you include Dustin Johnson in there, who's not here, right? And he probably should be in that conversation. But you got Brooks Koepka with 5 majors. You have Rory with 4 and all of his PGA Tour wins. There's the beauty of Rory McIlroy's game and his general popularity, but playing for Europe. And you have Brooks Koepka and the way that he says what he says. And I mean, you heard his answers today, right? He's stone cold. And there's some people don't like that. Some people do, but I think Rory and Brooks creates just there's a beauty in that it would be so cool if the Ryder Cup came down to that.
So, yeah, they're stylistically. I don't know if they're that different as golfers. I think Rory's probably his swing and the way he plays is probably prettier, like more aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
But stylistically, their personalities are really like opposite, right? And you've got Brooks as like I was kind of into his presser today. Like I was kind of I'm all over the place on Brooks generally, because he's kind of all over the place at times with what he says. But I was dialed today. Like it was good. I was into it. But then you've got Rory doing this video for the European Ryder Cup, social media, that is like how I'm not afraid to be vulnerable. I'm not afraid to like share my heart with people. And you're like, well, Koepka would never, like think about saying something like that. So
no,
just like personality wise, they're just stylistically so different, which I think is, personality comes up into play a lot in an event like this. So I think that would make, like, sort of what you're saying, that would make it super interesting.
It's like, this probably isn't it's almost to me like Apollo Creed and Rocky Balboa. One guy's just going to grit it out. He's going to get down and dirty, and he's going to take punches to the face and throw them back. And the other guy is, Rory is just Apollo Creed. He's smooth as could be, dancing around the floor. Oh, it'd just be beautiful. We'll see if it happens. Anything else you guys want to get into as far as storylines before we transition here into some of our bets, some of our predictions for the Ryder Cup?
Real quick, I wrote on this today, and I think that this is, I'm interested to see if you guys agree with this. I think it's a different U.S. team than in past years. I don't know if they're going to win, and they probably won't, to be honest. I'm going to pick them, but that doesn't mean they're going to win. But I think it's different for two reasons. One, they're not afraid of the analytics, and they're more organized than they've been in the past. Like, and Koepka, I asked him about this today. He's like, yeah, like, we've learned our lesson. There's been a ton of freedom to just do our own thing this week, prepare the way that we need to prepare. And he was like, even in 2016 when we won, it was like so many obligations, and it wears you out. And so I think their process is way better. But also, and I asked Homa about this, I think they just like each other more. And you can't measure that. Like, it's impossible to measure like what that even means. But I think when you have camaraderie, when you have galvanization, it engenders trust, Greg, and trust leads to what you always talk about, like, being comfortable during a tournament, being comfortable. Like, what is the thing that leads to playing well? It's being comfortable. And I think trust leads to comfortability during a week. And that's a little bit, I don't know, like, people might not buy into that because, again, it's you're not able to measure it, but I'm convinced that it's true. And Homa kind of affirmed, like, and even Koepka was like, hey, when you really like each other, like when you're really, really close and like you trust each other, I don't know if he said the word trust, but when you like, it's like you want to win, like you want to show off for the other guys. Like you want to say, like, you want people, like you want to prove yourself for your friends, you know? And I thought it was really interesting to hear both of those guys sort of talk about that, because I don't know that that's something that they've totally had in the past. You always had Tiger and Phil as these sort of individualists, two of the best ever, obviously, but I don't know that their personalities ever truly made sense for a Ryder Cup team. And this is the first time since 1993 that Tiger and Phil haven't been on an away Ryder Cup team.
Fascinating. And Patrick, real quick before we jump to our bets, is that the buddy system? I mean, is the Old Boys Network, the buddy system, whatever you want to call it, is that that's how the team is picked? Should it be picked that way? I mean, is that going to turn out to be a good thing? And is that the future of the Ryder Cup for the U.S.?
I think really what stuck out to me, what Kyle just said, is Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson not being in the locker room. I know Tiger's going to have influence with this team, but you don't really have the alpha personality. Yes, all these guys in their own respect are alphas, but they're good friends. They respect each other and they want to play well for each other. Where, I mean, how many people are really slapping Tiger Woods on the ass after he makes a birdie, right? That you're kind of probably a little afraid to do that, to be honest with you. It's like, hopefully I don't hurt him or something. And there's none of that with this team and this group of guys, which I think will serve them well, not only this week, but for Ryder Cups to come. And I did have a few other questions I wanted to ask you guys, where who do we have more faith in, Jordan Spieth or Justin Thomas this week?
Justin Thomas.
I think so too.
Well, I got cut out. What was the question?
Who do you have more faith in this week, KP? Justin Thomas or Jordan Spieth?
Probably Max Homa.
Yeah, that's probably fair. And then when it comes to Luke Donald and his composition of these groups, do you think there's a chance? Because we talked about JT and Spieth, what a jolt to the system that would be if Europe kind of just rolls through that pairing. But on the flip side, if you're Luke Donald and the Europeans, do you risk throwing out like a Rahm and a Hovland together, trying to secure a big point whenever it may be, but risking that? The Homa and Morikawa just clipped Rahm and Hovland, two of the top three players on the European team. Do you think it ever comes to that where Donald pairs two of the three Titans together?
Well, I'll say this. I don't think there's anything that compares to the Ryder Cup quite like high school hockey. So I'll tell you a quick story about my high school hockey career. When I was a senior, my team had some very good seniors and some very young, very small. We had a huge discrepancy between our good players and our bad players. And at the start of the year, we went with a balanced approach, tried to balance it out and put some seniors on every line. We wanted to have three lines that we could roll through, and it didn't work. We were the worst team in the league. And we came together for a meeting and decided to front load our team and put all of our seniors together. We built one line that could skate with anybody, could play with anybody. Our second line was very good. And our third line, we were hoping they didn't let up 2 goals in a shift. So we completely reversed the order, and all of a sudden we started winning, and we made it to the sectional championship game, which we lost 8-1. But the point is, everything turned around when we put our stars, quote unquote, together, and having that ability to compete with anybody and actually intimidate people can make a huge difference. So I think you run a risk when you start to spread things out and spread things thin. I'm a proponent of kind of condensing it and making your best teams your best teams.
I agree with that. And then final one. I know I've been asking too many questions. What do we think of the world number one? The putter switch, the fat grip, gripping the putter towards the bottom of it. He talked about it today a little bit, working with Phil Kenyon.
Yeah.
Said he made the call Monday after the Tour Championship. Might have even been Sunday night of the Tour Championship. It got to work 3 days later. Greg, I don't know if you've been able to look at the stroke or some pictures of it.
I have.
But what are your thoughts on Scotty and making this switch? I mean, it's tinkering season typically for these guys right now, and he's doing it right before the Ryder Cup.
I think there's a couple things. One, we go to an experienced coach like Phil Kenyon, and his first mission, so to speak, is don't mess this up, right? We're going to take this. We're going to be cautious with this. I'm not going to go and put a broomstick in his hand right away, right before the Ryder Cup. We're not going to go crazy here right away. We're going to look to some simple pre-swing things, which is exactly what they did. And that's exactly what works for Scotty Scheffler. So a couple things quickly. The putter seems to be much flatter on the ground, toe in the ground a whole lot more. His hands He has the putter running through the palm of his hands a lot more. Quiets hand activity. I'm a big proponent of that. He got a little more bent over at the waist. He didn't talk about this in his press conference, but I think that has multiple benefits for him. Not only helping control the path, like he said, but it quiets the lower body as well. I think sometimes in those short strokes, his knees had too much movement, and hopefully that limits it. So yeah, all the changes that Scotty talked about today that he and Phil have implemented, I think they check out in the video, and I think they're good things in theory. So I'm all for it.
Cool.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break. Looks like we got KP back, but on the other side, we're going to get into some of our bets. We're going to get our predictions, and we're going to send you on your way to the Ryder Cup. So all that coming up right after these words.
The Scudetto, where the soul of Italy meets the pinnacle of calcio. Catch Serie A on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount Plus.
And we're back. Beautiful. Go ahead, KP.
Sorry, I missed earlier. I got booted. My Wi-Fi. I'm like tethered to my phone, and we've got a lot of things going on. But Scheffler is. You guys are talking about Scheffler. I think there's a little bit of. It's weird that I had more confidence in him in 2021 than I do right now. I don't know if confidence might be the wrong word, but expectations are just very different. 2021, all he had to do was like, hey, win one match. And then all of a sudden he takes down John Rahm. And you're like, oh,
right.
This is awesome. And now it's like, hey, you kind of got to be one of the horses. And he's frustrated and I don't know, man. Like, he might go 4-0-1. We don't know what is going to happen. But I'm not going into this like completely confident in who is kind of clearly the US's number one guy.
So let's see. I understand that. These are big questions. You think about these kind of putting struggles. You can bet they're not going to be giving Scotty Scheffler anything. He's going to be finished. This is a stroke play for Scotty, right? He's got to finish everything out. That's what I would do if I were European. So there will be no concessions.
Cups, baby.
Yeah. I want to hear the noise. Okay. So let's see if the Scotty Scheffler worry for KP has any effect on the betting board. So we're going to talk about that. We got a couple things here. We're looking at the top U.S. score, the top European score, our favorite prop bet, and, of course, our winner. Josh, I'm not sure if you have the chart. If you do, this would be the time. So let's take a look. KP, we'll start with you. Your top U.S. scorer, 25 units on this one.
Yeah, I did not mean to do this, but I basically just copied Patrick here across the board.
Can't go wrong.
I love Cantlay this week. He's going to play a lot, right? We don't know how much JT and Spieth are going to play. I'm pretty sure Cantlay is going to play 4 times.
Yeah,
He's played great at the end of the year. And, he's a guy that I think you're going to have to drive in it fairly straight this week is going to be a massive advantage. I think you can be a little wild, but he's just such a straight and good driver that I think he's going to be in position a lot to make a ton of birdies. And, I think he's going to have an awesome week. I think he's going to go like 3-0-1 or something like that. So he's my top U.S. scorer.
Patrick, another Patrick for you as well. Anything you want to add to that?
Everything that KP said. I mean, best statistical season of his career, made a big stride with the driver, and the approach play was a lot better than years past. And really for him, which is kind of weird to say, it was a little bit of a down year in terms of putting, but he's going to get a ton of usage out there. Great ball striker. His quiet demeanor seems to fit these team atmospheres. So I love Cantlay a lot. I love him to have a great Ryder Cup. Love him to lead the Americans to a steady battle. And I think throughout the bag, he is the most well-balanced American. So that's why I'm going with him for the top scorer.
we're kind of on the same page with everything, except I'm going with Xander, the other member of that team. I just think Xander has the edge when it comes to putting, and we're splitting hairs here, but I just give a slight edge to Xander on the greens, which is crazy to say, but that's kind of and I think with iron play too, he has a slight edge. So I'm going Xander instead of Cantlay, but I like the team. Now we'll look at the top European scorer. I went kind of chasing a number here. I went Shane Lowry. I think he is going to get a chance to play with Rory McIlroy. And this could be, I'm not sure how much usage he's going to get, but I think you're going to see a high efficiency performance out of Shane Lowry. But Patrick, we'll go to you. You went with a different Irishman.
Yes, I went with Rory McIlroy, 5-1 to be the top European. Like I said, I think they got to ride the top three guys into the ground, and Rory McIlroy, his ability to drive the ball and putting, he doesn't really have a flaw in his game. Most experienced. The only concern, I think, is who are you going to pair him with? It could be anyone. They haven't really found who they want to pair with Rory McIlroy, but you're giving me the same price with Rahm, who's kind of been meh-ish adjacent since the Open. The FedEx Cup playoffs wasn't great. And I know Hovland has been fantastic, but between the two, I'm going to take Rory in that battle.
KP, we already know it's the same for you as well. Anything you want to add with Rory as top European point scorer?
He's just kind of got that look right now. I mean, he obviously he's played. He's really had a great Ryder Cup record until the last two Ryder Cups. One, the course in Paris was problematic for him and Rahm. It just didn't set up that well for them. And then two, he was playing bad going into Whistling Straits, and obviously he went 0-3-1 or 1-3-0 or something like that. So historically, great Ryder Cup player. He's playing statistically the best 2 years of his life have been the last 2 years. He's got that I want to go all five and, be the veteran that kind of carries this team to victory look about him so far this week. So I think it's going to be, as somebody who roots for the American team, I'm concerned about the way that he looks right now, but I think it's going to be phenomenal theater. I think he's going to be awesome this week.
It's going to be fun to watch. I'm hoping it's not a 5-0 week for Rory, as you'll see. I think we all are to some degree. But before we get to that, favorite prop bet. So in this, you can scan pretty much anything. You can go pretty much anywhere. There's a lot of really cool opportunities in this area for a Ryder Cup. So Kyle, back to you. Where are you going with your favorite prop bet?
Yeah, the truth be told here, my first thought was Bobby Mack to score 0 points, and I couldn't. And so I went to look it up, and I couldn't find it. And so I picked something else, and then I saw that Patrick had it on here, so I was like, "Oh, Patrick found it. I'm just going to use his number because, listen, Bobby Mack's a cool story, right? He's from Scotland. He almost won the Scottish Open. He's not Rahm, Hovland talented, but he's made a career out of it, and he's easy to root for. But he's just, I don't know, he's outclassed. He's not. And Europe always has kind of one guy like this, and we've seen him just kind of get housed in recent Ryder Cup. So who knows? He might go 2-0 and make all of us look like fools, but he's not going to play very much, I don't think. And so he would basically just have to lose both 2 matches outright to kind of fulfill this bet.
Patrick, same thing for you. Anything you want to add?
Same thing. The only 2 highlights I've seen from Bobby Mack this week was him getting ready for bed in his PJs, and this morning him frustrated on the range trying to hit driver. So doesn't really evoke confidence. I know he's won on this golf course. He's a great story, like Kyle said, but I think he only plays twice. His singles match, he'll most definitely be a dog to whoever it is on the Americans. And I reckon he'd probably be a dog with whatever 4-ball team he plays on as well. So plus 275 for him to record 0 points. I am buying in on that.
All right. We're beating up on the Scotsman. I went a different direction. Opening U.S. tee shot. We've had a lot of discussion about this. I have heard rumors that Patrick Cantlay is playing the odd holes. There is no way It would be absolute malpractice if Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele were not in the opening session. So you take now this opportunity for the U.S. who's going to hit the opening tee shot, and you have 8 potential players. Well, it's now in one of those 4 groups. You know that it's going to be Cantlay. You just don't know what the order's going to be. And if I'm on the road, I don't want an emotional leader hitting the first tee shot. I want ice. And who better than Patty Ice to quiet the crowd and bring a little bit of sweater weather back to Rome. So I got Cantlay.
Who's the most likely for the U.S. to just like pull a web and almost miss the ball?
Oh boy.
I don't think there's anybody.
I don't want to say it. I think early nerves. I have high expectations for him for the week, but if he has to hit like a 3-wood or something, maybe a Homa, where the jitters get to him a little bit early on, and then he settles into it and plays well, or I think something wouldn't be funny, but given his tone thus far, Wyndham Clark has some added pressure on his shoulders, which I don't agree with, so to speak, but others have made headlines of. Who do you got? I mean, you can't just like make me look like the bad guy here.
No, I think
I would never say that about any of these players.
I think Home is probably the right answer. He's very, and I love him for this, but he's very emotional, and that's what you don't. that's what you don't want on that first tee. Like when they're doing the freaking like Viking clap, and it's like it already feels out of control, and there's no shots been hit yet. So I think that's probably the right answer. Spieth might miss it just because he's like
he does that
about something else.
That could just happen to him from time to time.
That's a 2
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, if he has the wrong club in his hand, maybe that's what happens. All right. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. The winner. There's too much talk about who's going to miss the ball on the first tee for the U.S., but where's everybody going to go? I don't think anybody's going to miss the ball, and I think the U.S. is going to win. I think this is a different team. I think they're deep. I think they're ready. They got strong pairings. I think they have the advantage, and I think they play up to it.
Well, I agree with you, Greg, and this is unfortunately could be a college game day situation where we're all on the same side. I like US. I just think the number has swung too far in the direction of the Europeans. I understand they're the new girl at school, but give me the US dogs plus 110 on the road to get it done.
Dogs. I'm in on the US also. I think it's going to be I don't think either team's going to get up by very much. I think it's going to be close every single session. I think it's going to come down to the very end, and I think the U.S. is going to win, like, I'll say 15-13. I think it would be sick, and I think it could happen if after what Koepka said today, if he got to close it out against whoever on the European side. I think that is a scenario that would be pretty sweet to see.
It would be really cool. We need Josh to come in with a not so fast and throw up pick the Europeans or maybe a tie. Not so fast. But we're all here on the US side. So we got to move on now to our best bets. So we can flip the screen here. Best bets. This is the money ball. The best bet, anything that you want on the board. It's all available for you. KP, who do you got?
Yeah, I got Big Sep. Sep Straka, most points for a captain's pick for Europe. So this is your Fleetwood, Ludwig, Nikolai Højgaard, Bob McIntyre. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much Sep is going to play. I don't think McIntyre is going to play a ton. I think Ludwig has gotten a little too it's gotten a little too sexy to be on Ludwig this week. So I don't know. Sepp might not score any points, or he might go 3-0. Who can say? But I think at plus 575, that's a flyer worth taking.
I think it's a pretty good number, and it really could happen. He's got a lot of positive attributes. Patrick, anything on the board available to you? What'd you go with?
Tommy Fleetwood minus 120 to record more points than Ricky Fowler. I just think Fleetwood's going to be used 4 times, I would argue, and Fowler probably 3. So you're getting an extra match out of that, a potential way to get more points. And Fleetwood's in fantastic form. Fowler's kind of fallen off during the summer, doesn't have a great record in this event. So minus 120 for the Englishman to have more points than Ricky.
I couldn't find anywhere Ricky Fowler having every match in this Ryder Cup. He's gonna go 0-3. I have a feeling. So I did go with something I could find. Day 1 foursomes winner, first session only. I got the USA plus 145. That's I think going to be a really important morning. Like I said, the US has won the last 4 opening sessions. They've actually won 6 of the last 7. So I think there's a real advantage for them in this opening session. I think they're going to take it home. That's all we have for our best bets. And before we head to Rome and watch the Ryder Cup, does anybody have any final thoughts? I mean, we've been talking about this for 2 years. I know a lot of our thoughts have come out periodically throughout the year, but it's here. It's starting on Friday. Any last words?
Kyle, I'll see the.
It just needs to start. Yeah, it needs to start. I'm tired of talking. I'm tired of other people talking. I just want to see some shot. I mean, the one of the reasons we love the Ryder Cup is because you can watch the Honda Classic and not every shot feels consequential. If it's Thursday afternoon at the Honda, or even like a big tournament, it doesn't really feel like they are consequential, but not like this. Every single shot that is hit for the next 3 days, starting on Friday, is gonna have consequence. Is gonna be meaningful, and you don't get that anywhere else other than here. And I just can't. I mean, like, think about all the crazy things that are going to happen over those 3 days that always happen every year. Paris, Hazeltine, wherever. And I can't wait to watch that. It's the best, to me. It's the best 3 days in golf, and we only get it every 2 years. So I'm ready for it to get underway.
Patrick,
I got nothing, Greg. I'm
ready to go.
Stakes out. They're all out of the system. I'm ready to be heard. I'm ready to be right. I'm ready to be wrong.
Yeah, I'm ready for all my predictions to come true, because I'm pretty sure you just check out my card. That's how it's all going to play out. We've got this thing figured out. We've had 2 years to figure it out, and now it's finally here. We'll be back with you Friday, Saturday, Sunday, post-round pressers for or post-round podcast for you on each day, and we'll have boots on the ground. We got Kyle out there in Rome. We have Rick Gaiman out there in Rome, and a couple of us here backing up the home front as well. So that's all we have for you here today. That's Kyle Porter. You can get him on Twitter or on X at Kyle Porter CBS. That's Patrick McDonald. He's on X at Amateur Status. I'm Greg Ducharme at The Real GFD. Big thanks to producer Josh for all of his hard work putting this show together. That's all we got for you. Go USA.